Welcome aboard the PowerUp with Manal podcast, your go-to source for inspiring entrepreneurship, leadership, and mental fitness development. Get ready to push your limits mentally and come away feeling like a turbocharged version of yourself. Let's power up our lives. On this week's episode, I present to you Mackenzie Lee, founder of Cedar Chief of Staff. Mackenzie shares how he persevered through high-pressure jobs and facing hurdles in not very diverse or inclusive industries, how he made impactful pivots to find his why. As a consultant and de facto chief of staff, he then witnessed the huge benefits of executive support and leveraged it to create, today, his own company, Cedar, an organization devoted to empowering executives with a chief of staff. I can't wait for you to tune in and get a pump of not just motivation, but simply real talk with Mackenzie. Let's power up together. Mackenzie Lee, thank you so much for joining the Power Up with Manal podcast today. We are so excited to host you. Your journey is incredible. It is super inspiring. I personally cannot wait for everybody to hear what you've done. If we can take a moment, and Mackenzie, if you can share with us, CEO, entrepreneur, did not start off as an entrepreneur, your journey of who you are, where you've been, and why you're in the position you're in today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me today, Manal.
So, oh my God, Mackenzie so excited. I'm like a fan.
CEO at Cedar, which is an on-demand chief of staff business. And the way I got here, I have a multi-hyphenate background, which is similar to many chiefs of staff. I've been an investment analyst, I've been a management consultant, and then I've also been a de facto chief of staff. And, I saw the power that this role has on the CEO, on the executive team, and the entire company. Not to mention, the development path for the chief of staff themselves. And really, started to think, how could I build a business around this? I saw peers from my Stanford alumni class and folks, in the Silicon Valley space really think about leveraging this resource more and more. So there's more demand. And I was like, okay, how do I cross this with the on-demand model, which I experienced in a previous work experience, and bring that to life? And so today, I have a talent bench of chiefs of staff with all sorts of experiences, domain expertise, working styles that I match with founders and CEOs to achieve amazing things together, bring their company vision to life. And I have a lot of fun talking to people on the talent side, and then also, working with CEOs and founders to think about how they can get more leverage and maximize their personal.
I love this, especially because when I think about the chief of staff role, I personally have also been chief of staff for a large financial institution. But what's interesting is when I was chief of staff, and maybe I'm dating myself a little bit, but when I was chief of staff, that was not the title. The title didn't exist. It existed in governments and, I would say maybe military, right? But not really in corporate workplaces. Is that a little bit of a challenge, Mackenzie? And are you having to do a lot of education around what the role is and how it sort of plays into the, business/corporate realm?
Absolutely. One of my key goals is education. I think there's a lot of miseducation out there. So hopefully the content that I'm creating, hopefully the content I'm creating helps people learn a little bit more about what is this resource and what it can do for them. What a chief of staff is and what a chief of staff is not.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so you're right. The title wasn't as common. We saw maybe titles from the past, like executive business partner or, like strategic, advisor.
Yeah, business manager, maybe. Yeah.
Business manager, business operations, those are some more traditional roles. And there's definitely overlap with the chief of staff concept that I have defined. But again, some people think, someone said to me the other day, chief of staff is like an EA with a brain. And I was like, oh my goodness,
oh no,
we gotta start from the beginning. And by the way, EAs are extremely helpful and they definitely do have brains and provide extreme amounts of value. So, let's not use that phrase. And so, yeah, I think part of my job is that education component, which I love doing, and really helping people see what is the possibility for their new future with this chief of staff.
Right. When I think about a chief of staff and I think about either and it doesn't matter what phase you're in, whether you're a startup CEO, a tenured CEO, corporate executive with a large line of business that you're managing, a chief of staff just plays so many hats and can be so powerful. I feel like it's so underserved in the value that it can provide. When you talk to CEOs and executives, what is sort of the, pitch or the why that you tell them and why they need a chief of staff?
Yeah, the chief of staff is the unsung hero of business.
I
That's
like
my new
that.
tagline.
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm a
Absolutely.
hero.
Totally. Totally. You know, I asked them a few questions. I'm like, you know, how are you spending your time today? Do you have back-to-back calendar meetings? Do you actually enjoy doing your job? Are you doing things you don't want to be doing? Do you know what your zone of genius is? And are you playing in that zone all the time, or
Oh,
are
I
you
love
getting dragged
that.
away?
Yeah.
And so if they stop, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I keep doing these recurring meetings because they're on my calendar, or I just have this to-do list that just runs forever. And a lot of folks, have this stoic concept of the CEO. They have to do everything. They can't raise their hand for help. They really have to put on a good face for everyone while suffering inside. And so I tell them, this is crazy talk. How are you going to actually grow your company to the level you want? How are you going to achieve your vision? You're not going to do that by doing the same thing. You need support. You need help. Like the best athletes out there have not only one coach, they have teams of coaches. They have a nutritionist, they have a sprint driller, they have a stylist, they have
Yeah.
a real
A
estate
mental
person.
fitness coach. A
They
mental
have
fitness coach.
exactly,
Yeah.
totally. So why don't you have that? And why aren't you investing in yourself at the very base level, which is a chief of staff?
Right. No, that's so important. So if we take a step back just a little bit, just a little step back. Okay. So how do you go from having this vision and dream of being in the financial services or investment bank industry, to becoming today a chief of staff, an entrepreneur and CEO of your own chief of staff company? How, and why, and how?
That's a great question. I mostly grew up in Palo Alto, right next to Stanford, where I attended and for college. And I had this funny chip on my shoulder. I was like, I don't want to be a typical Stanford student. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be an engineer. Both my parents were engineers. I don't want anything to do with Facebook or Google. Like everyone's interviewing for those jobs. I'm going to go into finance. And there's not a lot of Stanford people in finance, and there's probably a reason why, because the community is so geared towards entrepreneurship and tech. And I was like, I wanted to be like a black sheep, so to speak, but in finance, which is not really being a black sheep, to be honest. So, honestly, when I got there, I did engage my analytical brain to the max. It was actually very stimulating. I had a great formal education from folks that were ex Goldman Sachs folks, and they taught me, and they demanded a lot, and they raised the bar of what I was able to achieve in business. I just realized that my whole creative side was not being engaged, and I, I'm lucky enough to learn multiple languages. I lived abroad as a kid. I did a lot of music as well, and so it was very creative before getting into the working world. And I realized I wasn't being creative at all in the working world. So I was like, something has to change. Um, and so that's when I made the switch from finance, and I've slowly drifted to more and more entrepreneurial um, roles. I took basically a role at a mid-sized company, but on a small team that was kind of pioneering a new product and service. So I was still being safe within a larger company, but
Yeah.
still getting a taste of that
Yeah.
entrepreneurship.
You were being an intrapreneur.
Exactly, exactly. And so then from entrepreneur to consultant. Actually, consultant, I was working as a 1099, so I got a taste of what it's like to be a flexible, fractional 1099 worker before the pandemic, by the way. So I was working remote,
Look at you.
and
You're just
yeah,
a trailblazer, aren't you?
yeah. So I was like, well, this is cool. This is amazing. I have more control over my life, and I'm traveling less for work and still delivering really high levels of service. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I create a single shingle for myself? How do I become a, a chief of staff consultant for myself? And then the more I talked about it in the market and connect with folks like you, they're like, I would love to join this. And so that's how I got to Cedar today.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you started on this journey, like your first entry into entrepreneurship, maybe share with us, because I'm sure there's people out there that are in that, if you rewind yourself a little bit, in that boat right now. What are some of the things that if you were to go back, you would tell your sort of novice or new entry into entrepreneurship?
I would say start by testing very small ideas, and don't put a
Okay,
lot
I
of
like
pressure on yourself. It all starts with an idea, and it starts with you talking about it with one other person, and then talking about it with 10 other people, so you find your idea, and then create a very small like MVP for that idea. So just posting about it on LinkedIn, or posting about it on Twitter, or wherever you have like a following, and seeing what the reaction might be from your community, your market, and take it from there. And don't be afraid to go through like hundreds of ideas, until you get to one.
Because it's not a one and done sort of thing, which I think is the misconception. And I sort of had this misconception too. I think as overachievers, or just having that in nature, you feel like, okay, I'm going to go and start something and it's going to be great and I'm going to like hit it big, and then you have like this expectation and reality that are like way far apart, and then you just like crash.
Totally.
You're crashed.
Totally.
Because this disappointment occurs when you've set the bar maybe unrealistically a little bit. I think accepting outcomes is important. And you hit it on the nail. That's such good feedback for people and individuals to hear, how do you sort of portray the importance of having a good support group around you?
Well, to be honest, I need to show this more in my posts and my writing on LinkedIn, because I advocate for a whole person conception of being, maximizing your personal impact. Like when I talk to CEOs, I'm like, how are you doing in terms of your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being? And then they're like, whoa, when's the last time someone asked me that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're shook.
They're almost like, thank you. Where's my phone? When can we start the conversation?
Exactly. And so then it invites a conversation around support networks and how all these other aspects in your life actually fuel your performance on the job. And if you model that and you're actually open about that to your employees and maybe the world, you are just going to attract healthier, better employees to your company.
100%, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I have this whole chief of staff, business, which I think mostly the messaging and the focus I have is on, impact on the job. But I have a bigger vision of just performance for CEOs, top executives, and helping them think beyond just how do I save time and manage my calendar down, but like what am I doing outside? What's my family like? What's my nutrition? What's my health like? And then seeing this whole picture that supports them as a top performer.
I love that, because I just did a bit on, burnout. And that is the reason, because it is so easy to create this avoidance of emotions, right? And you keep busy and you stay busy, because that also helps you avoid really tackling what's happening. But there's an old Buddhist, proverb that states your mindset is what makes you who you are. You are what you think. That whole quote, you are what you eat, derove from you are what you think, which actually matters more in today's society, because your mindset really matters. And it's okay, just like you mentioned right now, it's okay to be vulnerable. we're taught that we have to be this like, have this iron shield, and to be a leader or CEO or entrepreneur, like you cannot show emotion or you cannot show weakness because you are it and you're charging. But I feel like when you do, you've now created an opportunity to be real and trustworthy. You've also created this notion that I am human and it's okay to feel this way. Employees of mine or my partners or my peers, like, let's all be okay with feeling this way because we will be better in the long run and get support from each other, which is so critical. Why is that so missed? Why are emotions taboo?
Well, I have a lot of great thoughts on this. I'm so glad you asked. I think without getting too much into a history lesson, I am a big.
I love it. Me
I think
too.
it comes back. Yeah, from nerd to nerd. I love it. I think it comes back down to our puritanical history as a nation in the United States. We were founded on puritanical ideals of hard work, not showing emotion, just enduring it. And that maybe served these immigrants that needed to build houses and dig ditches and plant fields, but it doesn't serve the modern CEO. And they're not going to be successful with that. So there's a little bit of history there. And then it's just been modeled in our social norms. The way that kids are taught in school, yes, it is changing, but especially for men and boys, they're not taught to show their emotions. And from a young age, if they do, they're actually labeled as gay. And I am LGBT, and I actually obviously, went through a lot of this difficult process of coming out, and internalized a lot of homophobia and male norms. And luckily, I was able to break free somewhat from that. Still work in progress.
Right.
But now I see the way that these patriarchal values actually have an impact on the way we think and act and perform.
Yes.
So
yes.
There's a lot of social norms there too that contribute to the Stoic CEO.
Yes, no, very, very well said. And I agree. And we've all sort of faced a little bit of this. And thank you for sharing, because I know it's not easy to share, things that happen to us along the way that are challenging or just emotional. Like, it's okay, I've thought a lot about this, and I've also thought about, like, how do I want to make an impact? Because, we're on earth for a short while. And when this is the other reason why we have this feeling of emptiness, or emptiness epidemic, which I really think is a problem today. But we run day in and day out, and, we keep busy and all this avoidance, and we don't talk about emotions. And then all of a sudden we find that the things that made us move, we didn't focus on. The things that shook our soul or made us smile, we didn't really do much of. And these are true problems that we have in our society. I, love children. I feel like they're not given the foundation to really tackle society, just like you just mentioned. Like, you literally had to grow up in these societal norms and then deal with your emotions almost in isolation. And then you're just expected to level up, just mature up, like, boom. You're going to
Exactly.
wake up one day. Why are you feeling that way? Why are you in your feels? Why are you emotional? Oh, depression, anxiety, like, you know what I mean? And you're like, but this is my problem. And so it is my goal today. I've started putting a curriculum together for high schoolers to deal with life.
Amazing.
Oh my God, so excited. You're the first person I told, actually. So I was so excited.
I'm so honored. Well, this other thing that we haven't talked about, I've done life coaching and admissions coaching for high school students, always as a side gig. And that has obviously impacted me. And you're right. I think children are a gift to society, and we need to give them the tools to think about their own personal values, what they want from life, where they want to go, how do they get there. And so I'm so excited to see your course.
Thank you. Hey, I figured if we want to see change, we have to plant the seeds today, right? And I tell people
100%.
this all the time. I tell so many people this, and I hope this gets quoted somewhere. But we as parents and as individuals that have children around us are influencing and raising kids for a world that is going to be tomorrow, a world that doesn't exist today. But what we do is we focus so much on raising kids for a world that was yesterday, the world we grew up in. That is the biggest problem. We're raising them for tomorrow. We have to be just like any entrepreneur, just like any CEO, just like any consultant, any strategist. You have to be able to see the trends of where society is moving into and how kids need to be prepped for that new world, which right now kids are not being prepped for the new world of AI, of digitization, they're just not. They're not being prepped for it. They're being indulged in it and being taught how to do it, but not from a emotional aspect. Or a mental aspect. Yeah. It's a lot to ponder upon, right? It's huge.
I love it.
It's so huge. So tell us, Mackenzie, what is something about you that maybe you believe in that's not common knowledge, or you're trying to make change in or influence?
That's a great question.
It just came to me. I don't know why I felt like I wanted to ask that.
Well, I just wrote about this on LinkedIn the other day. I think CEOs need to have more fun. Where's the fun on the job? It's a slog these days. Investors are demanding more. 2023 has not been great for the economy, and a lot of people have had to go through layoffs. So maybe they think they can't have fun. But I think there is an element of creativity and joy and fun that even executives and should bring to the job, and it's infectious and will affect everyone around them. Back to this concept of a stoic CEO, that's absolutely the archetype that I think we should knock down. More fun on the job means you're actually maybe getting more energy back from the activities that you do, and your ideas are going to be better, and people want to work for you.
Yeah, no, true. But just like emotions were taboo or are taboo, I almost feel like fun is taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Like why?
Like why? Why is fun taboo? Like life is hard as it is.
Exactly. And we're spending how many hours at work?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're there. I mean, so that's a big thing, because a lot of people, especially I would say individuals with dependents or have a lot going on outside of work, really talk about like this work-life balance, but it's really part of your life. So you got to figure out how to integrate it, not separate it, which is the biggest reason people are so frustrated and have burnout and anxiety and depression, because you got to put it together. I did something back when I remember I was 30 years old, which was more than a decade ago now. Okay. Just to give timing of, digitization and society. I had to do my MBA in person because there really weren't that many remote options. So I did it full time. I had a baby, a toddler, and I was running strategy for a bank. And I remember at that time, I had to teach myself that, okay, I decided to do this. So if I'm deciding to do this, I'm going to have to do two things. One, enjoy it because it is an experience in my life. And then two, you know what I did, Mackenzie? I threw away all social norms. I threw away all the baby books. I threw away all the what you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. Plus, I worked in an industry where, you sort of had to be to be a good leader, you had to be an A-type leader. Yeah. No. I threw all that out. I threw it all out. I let it go, baby. Let it go.
I love it.
I let it go. I learned to enjoy my moment, be in the moment and enjoy it, because it made everything more memorable.
Yes.
My daughter slept at 2 a.m. with me when I was studying. She was a baby. She's fine. She's alive. She's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? She's super flexible because she could go to sleep anywhere. So there.
Preach.
But no, to your point, very good point. That is such a good point. So what are, who are some people or some books or some podcasts or whatever it may be? What is your go-to or your mentor or your must read when you need a little boost or push that you sort of fall back on?
I mean, I'm huge about music. As I mentioned, I grew
I
up
love
doing a lot
that.
of music as a kid. And I love all types of music. I'm listening to like Afro beats playlists. I'm listening to classical piano. I'm listening to some jazz.
And you
You know,
you play
music.
music, right?
I do. I did classical violin and voice as a kid,
Love.
and then I picked up guitar and piano along the way, and took a songwriting class. And it's so inspiring and also calming to come back to music. These folks are so dedicated to their craft, and they also inspire me to do my craft, right? So that's great. I always have some sort of like playlist playing when I'm working or going to the gym.
So does the playing of the music and being in that moment, is that almost, would you consider almost like a meditative state for you, or a outlet in sort of the busy life that you have?
Totally. When you are practicing a scale on the piano, you are thinking about only the tips of your fingers as they go across the keys. Like, you need to be hyper plugged in into the moment. And so, um, practice time always has been a meditation. I remember I was practicing so intensely as a kid, and sometimes my mom would try to come into my room and I would literally jump. I would jump, like, get so startled because I was so dialed in, so in the moment. And so yeah, it's definitely a meditation. It's a way for me to focus, to be in the moment, and take my mind off a lot of the thousand things that I want to be doing in my business.
Oh my God, I love that. I completely love that. Can you share, if you're okay sharing this, you mentioned a little bit about, not, there's an issue of inclusivity that occurs when you don't follow a normal path, or are not homogeneous to everybody around you in an industry or whatnot, right? And people face it for different reasons, right? Like, I faced it being a female, a minority, right? And in different industries, different things. How did you cope with some of those challenges? And maybe this might help bring in the chief of staff role. How can chief of staffs help CEOs and companies actually close some of that gap?
That's an amazing question. You know, when I joined the firm in my finance capacity, I quickly realized, hey, I was a young 22-year-old Asian gay finance professional in a sea of older white males. So honestly, there's a little bit of fitting in that I had to do. I changed my hairstyle, I changed the clothes that I wore, I changed the tone of my voice so I could gain more respect and uh, have people take me seriously. And so there's definitely compromises that you make so that the job becomes easier. At that time, there was the start of this organization, which is amazing and still here today. It's called Out for Undergraduate Business Conference. And the point was to recruit a lot of folks from college that identify as LGBTIA into banking and consulting. And so a lot of friends or peers that I'd met through that conference, I could rely on or commiserate and talk about what's it like being on the job. Yeah. So affinity groups are super helpful, just to talk about issues about fitting in or thinking about how to navigate that workplace. And there's definitely a change. Now back to your question on how could the chief of staff in more better D&I, diversity and inclusion, into the entire company. Um, this chief of staff is the CEO whisperer. They have the ear of the CEO. So, by the way, don't cross the chief of staff because you're not going to get what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
um, so they have an outsized impact on the mind share of the CEO, and they can definitely surface issues that need to be dealt with, and also give them a vision of what it's like to have a truly diverse and inclusive organization from top to bottom, right? By the way, it has to be at all levels. And there's a really great practitioner named Lily Zhang, who's also a Stanford alum of, classmate. And they they are an amazing advocate for creating these types of workplaces.
Oh, that's great. I love to hear that. And I also feel like when I, think about a chief of staff, and I don't know if this is a good analogy, but I almost see like an octopus with all the hands coming out, right? And I feel
Yes.
like, because they touch so many lines of business or so much of the leadership team, helping HR think through, okay, what are some of the top initiatives that need to be put in place from a people initiative perspective, right? And when you have, like you said, you're the CEO whisperer, you can help bring some of these initiatives to the forefront to drive that change, which, I think people don't realize how impactful that is,
Mm-hmm.
so impactful. So yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing. I know it's not easy. I
Oh,
mean, I'll
absolutely.
be honest, people make me cry. I've sat in the car and cried it out. As strong as I am, right? And all this, there have been days where I had to sit in the car, cry it out, and go back in and put my big girl pants on,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
happens. It's so real. And having an affinity group, or just a support group is so important. And we almost forget that. Like, you don't have to be alone. And so that's great on so many levels. So thanks, Mackenzie. I love it.
I was going to say one more piece to that. I have a mission to place a lot of chiefs of staff from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds into that spot too, particularly because it's such a position of power. And, it's a finishing school or a training ground for future founders and CEOs, or even getting, obviously into another C-suite or director level position. And so, that's definitely part of my mission to uplift, folks from those communities.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my God, hand clap for that. That is great. Thank you for making change, being an impact. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. I was going to ask you. So you've kind of had this amazing journey, and your journey's almost just starting, even though you've done so much. Tell us what's next. What's next for Cedar and Mackenzie, and what is everything that we should be looking out for that'll help us as chiefs of staffs, and joining Cedar, and maybe more than chief of staff.
Absolutely. So, in the medium term, I just dropped this Cedar Chief of Staff playbook, which got more than 1,000 downloads over the
Oh my
past
God,
72 hours, which is
yes,
amazing.
love,
um,
amazing.
yeah. And so I post daily on LinkedIn and compile a lot of the writings into this 42-page playbook. And the response has been amazing. And it's really fueled me to create a newsletter to continue delivering amazing content for the Chief of Staff community. So that's number one. Other things I'm going to be doing is creating courses too for folks like aspiring chiefs of staff that want to break into the chief of staff role, and then also chiefs of staff that want to up level their performance on the job. And then I think the longer term vision, hey, I think we can uplift this conversation like we're talking about, like CEO performance. It's not just the chief of staff. There's other things to be talking about and to supporting these top executives. And so changing the conversation to everything we talked about, full whole person, support, thinking about the interconnectivity of physical, mental, spiritual well-being, really getting away from the stoic CEO to having fun on the job, really changing the way business is being done,
Yes,
at the top. There's
yes.
so many leadership topics that I would love to dive into, and stay tuned for more.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it, Mackenzie. Preach, Mackenzie. Yes. Hey, I mean, I think that's great. And this has been so inspirational. And I think, if there's anything anyone's taking away from this, is the importance of being true to yourself, and then just taking the step and doing it. Like you said, right? Like, you wrote a 42-page manual and you put it out there, right? That's something, if anybody has a topic that they want to talk about or breach or make an impact, anyone can do that. And that's so easy, but it just takes the first step. Like, take that first step. Sometimes you'll fall back. It's okay. Sometimes you get to step 2 and then keep moving up, and I love that. Are there any other parting words that you'd like to leave our audience with?
You put me on the spot here.
That's what I do. I mean, it's a test. No, I'm kidding.
I love it. Yeah, stay tuned for some amazing content. I have really great dreams for bringing Chief of Staff to TV, and there's some ideas in the works. So stay tuned.
Okay, yes, we are staying tuned. Thank you, Mackenzie, so much for making the time today. I know you're super busy. Your words are inspiring. I know this is going to reach many people. I'm going to tag in the show notes Mackenzie's profile, Cedar's profile, and the manual. So you can go download it and really take advantage of some of the great lessons and learnings that are out there. Thanks
so much, Manal.
Thank you for tuning in. On each episode, we will continue to bring on successful, dynamic individuals to dig deep and share stories that will inspire you to power up your life. This show is packed with unrivaled storytelling and no reservation advice. Tune in now by searching Power Up with Manal wherever podcasts are found. Please show us just a little bit of love by leaving a review and hitting that subscribe button. This helps our small production get reach and voices heard globally. Let's power up together, baby.